What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. Today, we are talking about the blues. Welcome to lesson number 5 in our series for beginning improvisers. Now, if you're new to improvisation, you've probably heard the term the blues before. Now, this refers a little bit to kind of a style and a vibe of our playing, but also actually refers to a specific type of song form, and that's what we're going to dig into today. Your first question might be, Sean, why do I need to know this type of tune? The biggest reason is because a lot of tunes that we play in the jazz idiom as improvisers are blueses. This could be tunes like Tenor Madness, Blue Monk, Solar, or Blues in the Closet. All of these songs and many other ones take advantage of this simple song structure as an avenue for creativity. In addition to needing to just know the tunes that we improvise on, the blues is a great place to practice different concepts, whether it's harmony, rhythm, melody, whatever. This is a really wonderful place to just try new things because the structure is something that, again, is relatively simple, and we can all sort of feel at home there. So when we try new ideas, it might be a little easier to land them. And finally, the blues sensibility and vocabulary that we develop when we play this 12-measure song form, we want to carry that through all of the different material we play, whether it is a blues or not. Now that we know a little bit about why we might want to practice this, let's talk about what it actually is. When we talk about a blues, we are talking about a specific song structure. It is a 12-measure song form in most cases. It could also sometimes be 16 or 24 measures. 24-bar blueses are actually just 12 measures doubled, so everything is twice as long. And then 16-measure blueses have some of the similar sort of like signposts in them that are important, but maybe just some of the structure is a little bit different, but those main elements are still similar enough that we might say, well, this is a 16-bar blues rather than a 12-bar blues. Along with a number of measures, the blues also has a particular harmonic structure and also phrase structure. Now, the harmonic structure can be flexible. Different styles, different tunes have slight variations, but there are a few key signposts that we want to look for as we're going through the form. When we think about the phrases, since this is a 12-measure song form, it is made up of 3 phrases that are 4 bars each. Super important to remember those two things, that it's a certain harmonic structure and that it has a specific phrase structure of 3 4-bar phrases. Now, there's a million variations on this, so, don't come at me and say, well, Sean, there's just one blues that's this and it's different than this. Of course there is. This is speaking kind of in generalities, and the vast majority of blues tunes are this structure, but there's always going to be a little exception and variation depending on the actual tune. So to get into the structure of really understanding this type of song, we have to talk a little bit about music theory. Now, in general, for this beginning improvisation series, and with many of my students when they're at that beginning stage, I really love to avoid music theory as much as possible. I really like to focus on rhythm and melody. To me, those are the main building blocks for us as improvisers. Yes, we want to know theory and we need to learn theory eventually. But if we clutter our brain up with too much theory or maybe like the wrong type of theory too soon, that's what it does. It just kind of like clogs up the works. But today we do need to dig in to one theoretical concept, and that is understanding chords through Roman numerals. When we talk about harmony in this way, it just gives us a common language to kind of communicate about what is going on in a specific tune. It does not solve every problem as far as how harmony works, and actually the confines of sort of Western European classical music analysis don't work in every situation, but they can be useful for analyzing some types of harmony, and on the blues, it's relatively functional, so it does make sense. So to create these Roman numerals, what we're going to think is that if we have a specific scale, today we're going to be working in B flat. So we're going to think about our B flat major scale. We can assign a Roman numeral to each note in that scale, or we would say each scale degree. That is the technical term. So a B flat chord in the key of B flat, we would say that's a 1 chord. A C chord in the key of B flat would be a 2 chord, and so on and so forth up the scale. Now you'll see some of these Roman numerals I've labeled, some of them are uppercase, some of them are lowercase. That has to do with chords, whether they're major or minor. We're not worried about that today. We are only going to encounter a few of these chords for the blues, so we're just going to worry about major, or actually what are called dominant 7th chords. In addition, we're not even going to worry about spelling these chords today. We're just worried about understanding the Roman numerals, so the roots of the chords. Let's put some of this into action on our blues. As I mentioned, this is a 12-measure song form. So I'm going to throw up 12 empty measures of staff here, and we can take this apart phrase by phrase. So our first 4-bar phrase starts on a 1 chord. Second measure, it goes to a 4 chord, and then back to a 1 chord for the remaining 2 measures. Now that second measure, sometimes you'll see that as also a 1 chord, so it's just like 1 for 4 bars. Again, a little bit of variation here, but for me, when I think of my default setting for a blues, it has a 4 chord in the second measure. So if we put that into the key that we're in, and today we're in B flat, we think, all right, my 1 chord, B flat, that's pretty obvious. For my 4 chord, I'm gonna think 4 notes up in my scale. Thus, it's going to give me an E flat. Remember, we count B flat as 1 in this case. And that's how we can figure out all this Roman numeral stuff, at least on a basic sense. There's a lot of layers on this, but this is the starting point. So when we go to our second phrase, we reach one of the kind of key points in a blues that kind of makes it a blues. And that is in the 5th bar, or at the beginning of that second phrase, we go to the 4 chord. So in this case, it's going to be E flat because we're in the key of B flat. So we do that for 2 measures here, and then we go back to the 1 chord for the remaining 2 measures. That's one of the elements that signals this is a blues, by going to the 4 chord in the 5th measure. Now finally, to round this out, we get to the last 4 bars. A lot of musicians refer to this as the turnaround of the blues. A lot of variation can happen in this section of the form. Today, we are talking about what is called a 5-4-1 turnaround. And as you can see, we have a 5 chord, then a 4 chord, then a 1 chord, and we go back to another 5 chord at the end. So we would just do the same steps we've already gone through. Our 5 chord is going to be F in B flat, C, D, E flat, F. That is our 5th scale degree, so it's going to be an F, down to an E flat, and then finally to a B flat for resolution. We could have an F in the very last bar to kind of like help us get back to the beginning. Again, that would depend on the individual tune you are playing. So that is the nitty gritty of what's going on in this tune harmonically. And again, these key moments of it starts on the 1 chord. In the 5th measure, it goes to the 4 chord. In the last phrase, it has some sort of turnaround or some sort of 5-1 resolution. That's really what makes a 12-bar blues a 12-bar blues. How do we practice this though? That's really the question, and we want to get to playing this on our horn as soon as we have some good understanding of what's going on here. We're going to talk about 2 practice strategies today to really get this form under our fingers so we both understand it, but more importantly, that we hear where these changes are going. We've got to use our brain to kind of help us make sense of this, but really at the end of the day, we want to listen to what the rhythm section is playing and connect with them. So the first thing we're going to do is we are just going to play roots through the form, and we are going to sing them one time, and then we're going to play them the second time. Now, if you feel a little bit, self-conscious about using your voice, that's not uncommon. The biggest thing you got to do is get over it, in all honesty. As brass players, using your voice is 100% essential to being a good brass player, but also to be a good improviser. You're learning to play by ear, so you got to connect with your voice. So you could do this in whole notes, but I would really encourage you to think about adding a little bit of rhythmic vocabulary to this. We talked about rhythm a fair amount in this series, so let's just take a simple rhythm and we're going to move this through our chords. So our rhythm is going to be this. So that's do dot dot. First time through, we're going to sing. Second time through, we're going to play it on our horn. So let's check it out. Do dot dot, do dot dot. Do dot dot, 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 do dot dot. Now playing. So that really addresses us understanding this theory and knowing that when I get to that 5th bar, I got to go to a 4 chord. Really, really important that we just get that super memorized and we can kind of transpose this into all the keys. I would start with B flat and F. Those are probably your 2 most important keys, at least for trombone players. But if you play with a lot of like guitar players and blues bands, for example, you might want to learn it in G. They love to play in G, maybe in E. Some of these other keys can be useful depending on what styles you play. But for us playing kind of straight ahead jazz, especially as a beginner, you want to think about B flat and F are the best starting place. So that's kind of the theory side of it. Let's think about the melodic side of it and the phrase structure side. So now we're going to do a little bit of call and response. We've already done a little bit in this series, but we're going to put this into context of our blues structure. So since we have 4-bar phrases, we're going to split that in half. We're going to have a 2-bar call and then a 2-bar response. I'll just show you a little example. You'll have to practice this on your own. The call is going to be predetermined. I'm going to play the same little piece of vocabulary at the beginning of each 4-bar phrase, then I'm going to improvise in the response. So I'm going to keep it pretty simple so I can make sure I get back to that phrase each time at the beginning of each phrase. Excuse me, that piece of vocabulary at the beginning of each phrase. That's what's key about this, because we want to start to gain a intuitive and sort of listening connection to where the phrase structure is. So we don't necessarily have to count, I'm in bar 1, then in bar 2, then in bar 3, then in bar 4, then in bar 5, or just to think about the chords. We want to do that as well, but we really want to use our ear and have it be intuitive and felt. So let's check it out. I'll just play a little example. Again, this will be something you want to practice on your own. All right, those are two super meat and potatoes way to practice through the blues. Even if that seems simple to you, I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time there till you have absolute fluency. I tend to find with my own students, especially the ones I teach in person, the areas where they struggle is not having total mastery over the basics and the fundamentals. They want to get to complicated things maybe a little sooner than they're really ready, which I understand. We all want to do that. But absolute mastery of these fundamentals is what will make the more difficult things easier when you get there. All right, as with every other lesson in this beginning improvisation series, I've got just a little bit of a listening recommendation to help reinforce some of these concepts. Today, we're going to go outside of sort of the jazz idiom and actually look at kind of a rock or blues example. This is Jimi Hendrix on the tune Red House on his album Are You Experienced? I threw the link down in the description so you can just click on it, check out his solo. His playing and singing on the entire track are great, but I think this just really gets at like what the blues should feel like, even regardless of what does it sound like and what notes is he playing. This captures the feel of the blues and sort of the intangibility of playing this style, this song form, and all these form things that we talked about are on really clear display in this example. I would encourage you not even necessarily to count the form or think about the changes, but just listen for the form. The rhythm section is going to tell you where it is, and that is what you really want to rely on. Yes, eventually you want to develop that theory skill and all that kind of stuff. That's very important, especially as you develop as an improviser. But at the end of the day, your ear has got to guide you. So you've got to train it to help you rather than do the other thing. All right, we'll see you in the woodshed.